Please rise to the pledge. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Almighty and everlasting God, who presides over all things in heaven and earth, come and preside over these deliberations so that those who make the decisions may be guided by your wisdom.
Good evening. Mr. Ryan, I'll turn it over to you.
Okay, good evening. There's only one item on council's agenda at this point, and it is the ordinance for second and final reading. File of council number 13 of 2020, an ordinance to amend the City of Wilkes-Barre zoning ordinance as adopted and enacted to establish regulations for the recognition and protection of historic resources and the regulation of demolition.
Questions? Comments?
Okay, Mr. Mayor. Mayor's agenda.
Good evening. First is authorizing the execution and delivery of certain financing documents with Pension Funding Solutions LLC or such other entity as may be deemed appropriate for the purpose of funding all or a portion of the city's unfunded actuarial accrued pension liability and authorizing proper officers to do other things necessary or appropriate in connection with the foregoing. This is a project that was actually started when I first took office in January. And we realized that the pension fund was really underfunded, and it was actually started January, February timeframe, but because of the COVID virus and everything else, it was not able to keep working on it. But this solution is going to be something that's going to really help us to stabilize pension funds. Secondly, authorizing the proper city officials to prepare and submit necessary application to the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania, acting through the Commonwealth Financing Agency for the local share account for the Luzerne County program funds, and that the mayor is hereby authorized to enter into appropriate agreement with CFA along with any other project documents related to LCTA's new transit facility project. The application is accepted. As you know, LCTA is going to be building a new facility on the old Murray complex. We're talking about roughly a $70 million project with well over 100 employees. Authorizing the proper city officials to prepare and submit the necessary applications to the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania, acting through the Commonwealth Financing Authority for the local share account, Luzerne County program funds. The mayor is hereby authorized to enter into the appropriate agreement with CFA along with other project documents related to the police cruisers project. This, we're asking for the funding to purchase 3 new police cruisers. They're in pretty bad shape, and we want to make sure we keep turning over new vehicles.
Mayor?
Yeah.
Don't we use Enterprise and lease them?
We did, Mike, but what's happening is that agreement is coming to an end, and these vehicles are in pretty bad shape. So what we're looking at is using these LSA funds for purposes of the city. And this would be, I don't know a better way to use the funds than to start purchasing police vehicles with them. They'll be our vehicles, we'll own them rather than leasing and so forth. So sitting with the police department and the gentleman, Detective Casey, that actually oversees that, we looked at this might be a better option to go with. So I want to start using LSA requests for the city. Authorizing the proper city officials to prepare and submit the necessary application to the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania, acting through the Commonwealth Financing Agency Authority for the local share account. Funds for the mayor hereby authorized to enter into the appropriate agreement with CFA along with all other project documents related to the Emergency Operations Center project. We need a place to go when there's an emergency where City Hall has to be evacuated. We own a building up in the Hollenbach Park area. It's a historic building. Mr. Brooks, I'm sure you're aware of that. What we would like to do is utilize LSA funds once again and to actually create a emergency operations center in that building. we'll look at doing it in the historical nature that that building deserves, because I think it's a historical building. But it's a place that we're going to be able to go when there's an emergency, we have to be relocated from this area, possibly a flood, something of that nature, and we'll be able to house the emergency personnel there. Authorizing the proper city officials to prepare and submit the necessary application to the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania, acting through the Commonwealth Financing Authority for the local share account, Luzerne County program funds, and the mayor is hereby authorized to enter into appropriate agreement with CFA along with all other project documents related to City Hall renovation project, if approved. City Hall, as you've probably learned the last 10 months, we need a lot of repairs. We're not talking about the elevator, we're talking about other things. Looks like we're going to need a updated HVAC system in City Hall. Also, if you go outside the back, you see where the building, actually part of the foundation, other things are starting to be dissipated. So we need some repairs in this building. It's a historical building. We want to make sure that everything's updated. We did do some painting and lighting, things of that nature. We will, as you approved it, look at putting a new elevator in, but the building still needs a lot of work. Once again, Mr. Belisco, as you had asked, we want to use the LSA funds for the city, okay? And this is a great way to do that. Okay, and this is the last one. Whereas the establishment of Mohegan Sun Casino has resulted in revenue from the facility being allocated local share account. Money is in the amount available to distribution to municipalities. Revenue from this account is designated to improve quality of life of citizens in the city of Wilkes-Barre municipalities. Whereas the city of Wilkes-Barre is desirous of applying for a $410,000 grant from the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania, acting through the CFA, the local share account, Luzerne County program funds. The funds will be used for the schools and homes education Luzerne County program. This directly benefits the young children within the city. It's a comprehensive educational family outreach and attainment program that spans from pre-kindergarten through high school. Shine LC provides home visits after school and summer programming, promotion of parental involvement in the educational process, curriculum coordination with school teachers, and the ability to seamlessly move from one phase of the program to the next. This program has been extremely successful in Luzerne County for the past 5 years, providing an array of various educational activities to students. It is a replication of the nationally recognized and highly successful SHINE program in Carbon and Schuylkill counties. This is a learning opportunity for both parents and children that lay the foundation for more parental involvement throughout child's education.
Questions? Comments? Thank you, Mayor. Okay. Mr. Belisco.
I have nothing pressing today, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Marconi?
I do have just a couple for the administration. Charlie, I spoke to you just briefly this morning. There's a resident asking about ATVs, if there's anything that can be done with ATVs, specifically on North Main Street in Elm to Johnson. He sent me an email. He said it's very frustrating. He was told police won't chase them anymore, and the riders know that. You know, are we simply letting them get away with it? And he put down that your help on this matter would be appreciated. So can we just take I don't know what we can do about that, or if we can ask Chief Coffey, anything.
I'll talk to the chief. I know that they do enforce it because
Okay.
I physically saw it one day.
Yeah, me too. Yeah.
They're very difficult to enforce.
Oh, yeah,
But
yeah.
I'll raise it with them. They're very aware of it. It's
Okay.
in all the neighborhoods, unfortunately.
Understood. And then just number 2 here on Darling and Brick Street, there's still that hole that Mayor, I don't know if you remember you and I going by. That's still there. It is covered with metal with a couple of cones there, but I don't know, the one sinkhole that was on Madison Street, that's taken care of. This one here that's on Darling and Brick, it's been there a while. Any way we can just take a look at that, please?
Sure, I'll check it out.
Thank you.
I'll have Butch check it out.
Okay, I'd appreciate that. That's all I have, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, sir. Mrs. McBride?
Well, first I have some questions about the resolution pertaining to the pensions.
When we get our financial.
Yeah, that would be great. Thank you.
Sure. That's up there, and then you'll have to enter your name.
Councilwoman McBride had a question about
About
the
the
pension.
question about the pension,
So if you go over the program.
the concept.
Good evening, Lou Verdelli from RBC Capital Markets. It's good to see everyone. This is, I think as the mayor mentioned, something that we've talked to the administration about really for almost the entire year. And it's a program that's been coming together for other municipalities around the state. So we're here to answer your questions. My partner, Stephen Flaherty, works directly on the structure of this program, and it's something that he's really put together, so we'll try and address your questions.
Good evening. Thank you for having us. I don't know whether I heard Mr. McCormick indicate there was a question. We have some information that it was our intention to go through with you. I don't know whether you prefer we go through with it, and then, happy to answer any questions.
I think a brief overview would probably be helpful,
Okay.
and then we'll go from there.
Fantastic. So if you look at the second page, this is very intentionally very brief. We're trying to overwhelm you with minutia. Little bit of the background. Act 205, which is Act 205 of 1984 in Commonwealth legislation, governs municipal pension plans, all aspects of municipal pension plans, administration, reporting, et cetera, et cetera. Additionally, it provides for a pension aid, which is paid to municipalities that have defined benefit plans or for defined benefit plans. And that aid is dispersed on a per capita basis. So that is every year, every plan, including the cities, reports to the Auditor General's office how many enrolled personnel they have in most municipalities have at least 3 plans: a fire plan, a police plan, and a non-uniform plan. Those all get tallied up, and then the pot of money that's available to pay this aid is dispersed based on the per capita representation. The cities has, for the last couple of years, been right around $2 million annually in terms of that money. And the first bullet point here that's relevant is that money is distributed to the city one time a year. It was actually just done. Under the act, it needs to be done by the first business day of October. Treasury sends out that money. And under the act, it is required to be used for pension costs, either to fund unfunded liability or to cover current year MMO. So it's not money that the city has at its disposal to use like general fund dollars. And that's a pretty important distinction in terms of what these revenues are about and what can be used for. So what we're talking about here is a pooled securitization by a number of Pennsylvania cities of these distributed Act 205 revenues. I may do this interchangeably. I'll probably refer to them as either the revenues or the receipts. So hopefully, I'll just say that up front so hopefully it doesn't confuse anybody. So the prospect of either doing a borrowing, a securitization, or other type of transaction and pledging the revenues is already authorized under the existing 205 legislation. So there is not any new legislation or any changes in the current law that are going to be required. Because these are pension-related obligations, they would have to be done on a taxable basis. So that's an IRS rule, not a state rule. However, by pooling them, and because the source of these receipts to the city is the proceeds of a very specific tax at the Commonwealth, which all of us in this room probably pay. It's a 2% tax on property and casualty insurance premiums. And so if you think about that, if you have a mortgage, most mortgage companies require you to escrow that money to make sure that your homeowner's premium gets paid. And even if you don't, they will step in and pay it on your behalf. So it's a very stable stream of income. And so because it's a very stable stream of income, and the legislation says it must be paid out under a strict schedule to the participants once a year, it's attractive from a credit rating standpoint. And it's more attractive than just the general obligation or basic credit of the average municipality that receives the pension aid. So the proceeds of the transaction would be placed with the trustee and distributed pro rata. And when I say trustee, I mean the pension plan's trustee, the person holding custody of the pension plan assets on behalf of all the participants in the plan. And distributed pro rata to the pension funds directly. That pro rata distribution is not required by the Act, but it's our understanding from the discussions with the administration that they believe that that's the appropriate way to do it, so that each plan's deficit will be reduced in the same proportion. There's no, if you will, favoring of one plan over another in that regard. The pension funds will, immediately become the property of the plans, not subject to any give back or any kind of claim by any other parties. And unless the city would choose otherwise, they will be invested as usual with the same oversight and the same investment advisors, et cetera. There's nothing in the Act that requires any kind of change to or limitations on how the city would administer the funds placed in the plan from this. Once the money goes into the plan, the city has no further involvement. The money's in the plans will be administered by the Pension Administration Board and invested as determined by the investment directions of the board. Neither the plans nor the city itself have any obligation to the bondholders. So to fund these, we go out and sell bonds, and what those bondholders are saying, well, like anybody who lends somebody any money, they say, hey, how are we getting our money back? And so the way the money's coming back is the city is going to assign. This is actually what's referred to as a securitization. The city's going to say, hey, in return for money up front, we will assign you whatever we get from the Commonwealth up to what we get. So if the Commonwealth were to end this program 3 years from now and say, hey, we can't afford to pay this out anymore, or we want to grab that money for ourselves, or whatever the scenario, which is incredibly remote. If that were to happen, that's on the risk of the bondholders, because they understood that the only thing they were getting was whatever was transmitted through this program to the city. So we've had some discussions with the administration and provided some information for them and their actuaries, and it's our understanding that the deposit of the estimated amount of the proceeds would increase the funding level of the plans, that is reduce the unfunded liability. So it would reduce the funding level from about 53% to about 65%. So it is a fairly material change, particularly when under Act 205, the 50% threshold is an important point. Below 50%, there are distress provisions in Act 205 that come into play and potentially have further negative effects on the plans themselves. This deposit and the resultant increased funding level does result in lower required contributions in a number of what I would call the out years, that is years past 2021. We'll talk about that in a little bit. And then any surplus revenue is not required to pay the debt service on the bonds in future years will go back to the city just as if they were received, you know, in prior years. So the city is not taking on any liability and not pledging any of its either general fund or other sources of revenue in process of this transaction. It looks like, in terms of numbers, on the next page, and then we can have discussion, questions after that, whatever the body would prefer.
Questions? Relatively new program, correct, or?
Well, the 205 program's been in existence since 1984.
Right.
The provisions of the borrowing and pledging and securitization have been in the act since it was passed. There have not been a significant number of transactions where folks have actually done this in the past.
Right.
That is correct. And as far as we know, this is the first transaction where it would be looking to be done on a pooled basis. That is, with more than one participant at a time. And the rationale for that is there's economies of scale when you do something like that.
The more people that participate, the more benefits there are for those that are involved in the plan, correct?
Well, essentially, and yes, the big benefit is, so selling bonds into the public market is I'll use the double negative, is a not inexpensive process. And the legal fees and the rating fees and those things don't change a lot. So they don't change dramatically whether you do 5 million or 150 million. And so if you do the aggregation, you're spreading those costs, which are relatively fixed, over a wider base, and therefore each individual participant's share is smaller than it would be otherwise. So that's where the benefit comes in terms of economies of scale.
Okay.
Do you have to have so many municipal participants in this to make it work?
No, we have, I would say at the moment, the expectation is between 8 to 10. There's probably as many as another 15 plus that are kind of on the fence, and that's part of the reason that we moved the process forward at PEDFA, Pennsylvania Economic Development Financing Authority, which is where this is going to go through, because we wanted to incentivize people to make a decision, one way or the other. But we have enough, I guess I would refer to it as critical mass. We have enough critical mass to move forward from that standpoint.
Do you have a timeline on the decision, deadline?
Yeah, we're just looking to both price and settle, which pricing is where orders are taken and rates and everything is locked in. Settling is the actual exchange of cash. We're looking to do both of those before the end of the calendar year.
Okay.
So there's other cities involved, correct?
Correct. Then not just cities, the potential eligible participants
Okay.
are any municipal entity which receives this 205(8). So that's all three classes of the cities, townships, boroughs, et cetera. So yes. But it's not limited, to be clear, Councilor, it's not limited to cities. The 205 receipts are distributed more widely than that.
So what happens if someone can't make their payment?
In terms of the individual municipality, there's actually no impact, because, so just to take a step back to kind of tell you, so I mentioned earlier that this tax base is very stable, right? If you are a homeowner and you are in economic distress, which there are a lot of folks in that situation at the moment, one of the last things you're going to not pay is your property and casualty insurance premium, right? Because if you don't pay your real estate taxes, the worst thing that happens is after you go through the whole process, which I don't know, Charlie, it probably lasts about a year before you go delinquent and then go to collection. That's the worst thing that can happen. You don't pay your homeowner's insurance premium and your house burns down, you now have no house and no insurance to rebuild your house. So that's why this is very stable. The other aspect of what we're doing is the amount of proceeds that can be generated for each individual borrower are based on 80%
of the receipt that they're receiving. What that does is it means that there's, in our world, that's what's called a coverage ratio, right? If there's $1 coming in, but only 80 cents of it is needed to offset that, then that 20 cents is a cushion. So the bondholders are buying this knowing a couple of things. One, the source of the tax is very stable. Two, there's a cushion. And three, that legally, any of the participants are only required to have that receipt flow to the extent they receive it. So to use get around to the specifics of what you're asking, if there's 10 participants, one participant doesn't receive enough aid in a given year, for whatever reason, to cover their obligation, even with cushion involved. That loss, if you will, is borne entirely by the bondholder, the people who bought the bonds. That's something that will be sold that way with the disclosure in that way. And this is essentially, not exactly, but essentially equivalent to what's called appropriation debt. That is, people are buying long-term instruments in the bond market, understanding that something has to occur every year for them to get paid. So it's not an unusual structure in terms of appropriation risk. The risk here is just that the receipts from the Commonwealth don't add up to enough money for an individual borrower. No borrower is taking any responsibility for anybody else's debt. So if borrower 10 is light, there's no obligation or requirement for borrowers 1 through 9 to come up with some money to make the bondholders whole in that scenario. I think that's where you're going.
And who are some of the other participants?
Nobody's authorized me to discuss this, with them publicly, but I can tell you that there are 2 or 3 that are similarly situated third-class cities. There are 3 of them that are townships and a couple of boroughs. And then in the other group, the group that I said is, we've had very substantive discussions with, but they haven't made a final decision. Again, third-class cities are probably the biggest component. The reason for that is that the aid is based on defined benefit plans, and the cities are the ones that historically have had the largest, defined benefit plans. We've had discussions with some of the other cities. There are no counties. Counties don't have the pension issues that cities, townships, and boroughs have. All of those folks are in the process of doing what the administration is doing right now, of going to a meeting, and when it becomes public, I'd be happy to share it with the administration so they can keep you informed. But I don't have any authorization from anybody else to be discussing what they're thinking about doing at your public meeting, unfortunately.
I understand. Thank you so much.
Absolutely. Any other questions, or do we want to jump over to the second page where the numbers are?
I have one question. I was reading over Act 205 earlier today, and I noticed that there was a provision where this allows municipalities to raise the earned income tax. Do you know anything about that?
I'm not sure which provision. First of all, Act 205 governs a lot of territory in terms of pensions. The relevant sections regarding the pension aid and the types of transactions that we're talking about are Chapter 4. I'm pretty familiar with Chapter 4, and there's nothing in there that I have seen that has anything to do with EIT.
Okay.
From that standpoint. That may be in, my guess, and I understand this is strictly an educated guess, my guess is that's in the provisions that deal with distress identification and distress remedies. But they're 2 totally separate sections of Act 205
Okay.
from that standpoint.
Okay.
Yeah, I saw the same thing. So we just got this, an hour ago, and when I went home after a meeting, I just put in the search engine Act 205 and started to quick read before I got here. And that's the thing that popped up was Hazleton. Hazleton popped up. So now I think it's becoming clear to me, though. Hazelton's a distressed city.
Hazelton's in Act 47, so yes, they are a distressed city.
So
they're-
then that 205 chapter related to, I think I must have read the same thing you just read, about a 1% of their earned income tax, how to back it up.
Yeah, and
That-
if it's of help, I'm happy, again, Act 205 is, I think, 7 or 8 chapters long, as they refer in the code.
Mhm.
The only one that's relevant to what we're talking about is 4.
Chapter 4.
I'd be happy to send that section to the administration so they can circulate it if folks want to see it. It's a simple thing for us to do.
Okay.
That'd be great.
I'll go to the second page if you will, and then again, obviously, happy to answer any questions. So I mentioned that what we're doing is we're using a portion of the historic receipts, again, which has been about $2 million run the last couple of years. And so essentially what we're doing is we're backing into a proceeds number or grossing up the number. And so if you have a set amount of available proceeds, and in this case I'm just going to use 1.6 million, 80% of 2 million. If you have a set amount of proceeds or receipts, how much proceeds can be generated are the function of 2 things. It's essentially an algebra or calculus equation, and my high school math teacher would be very mad at me that I'm not definitively identifying which it is. It's the term, and it's the interest rate. So just generally speaking, the lower the interest rate, everything else being equal, the larger the amount of proceeds that can be derived. And again, everything else being equal, the longer the term, the greater the amount of proceeds. There's a practical limit on term. I don't know if any of you ever looked at, the difference between a 20-year mortgage and a 30-year mortgage. 20-year mortgage has a more expensive monthly payment than a 30-year, but you pay a heck of a lot less interest over the life of the deal. We've kind of identified as the outside limit about 20 years. It stops making real good economic sense if you get much past that. And so what we're showing here is a 20-year snapshot. And then in terms of the interest rate, we're using an estimated rate of 3.5%. That's probably a little high. We're trying to be conservative. We don't want to use a number that's too good and then have to come back and tell the city that we overshot the mark. So as we described earlier, what's going to happen here is about $21.8 million in proceeds would be made available to the city. City would pass it to the plans. It would be distributed out amongst the plans. Again, the administration has indicated to us, and that's the way we've run these calculations, that it will be proportionate to the liability of each plan. So no plan, again, is getting a disproportionate amount of money over another plan. So what we're showing here is in the column marked 1, and there's just a little footnote or note here. The proceeds move about $500,000 plus or minus for every 0.25% change in the interest rates. So this is showing a 3.50. If this ends up being 3.25, this number goes to about 22.3 million. So it's just more proceeds that would be available we put into the pension plans. So column 1 shows you, and this is information that just comes directly from the city's actuarial reports and the reports that they file under Act 205. This is the what we're calling the pre-transaction annual city pension expense. And you see it's about $6 million a year, pretty consistently to 2028. Drops down to 3 for a couple years and then 2 and some change. And then actually, at least in theory, and the snapshot we have at the moment, goes effectively to 0 in 2037. That's not likely to happen because all pension calculations are a snapshot in time, and they all assume that the plan performs over time exactly as the plan design calls for. That is, that the investment return over time is exactly the called for return. Inflation is exactly what it's estimated to be. That's not obviously a perfect science, the reason that the numbers are higher in the early years is there's 2 main components of the city and any entity's pension cost. One is what's referred to as normal cost, It's kind of exactly what you would think it is. It's the cost of running the plan and the fact that the people in the plan got older, vested in another year of service, probably got raises, inflation went up. That means that every year there's a cost associated with just having a plan with a certain number of people in it, depending on their age and wages and so on. The other portion, which is by far the biggest part here, is the amortization of the unpaid liability. The unpaid or unfunded liability is the amount of money that the plan is short based on what's been deposited historically versus what the calculation of how much is owed has been. So essentially, it's a debt that the city owes the pension plans for past issues. Could be the most common one's market loss, right? If there's a big loss in the market, value of the assets in the plan goes down, they don't make you pay that back in a single year, right? If you lost, the plan lost a couple $1 million in the market, any city would be hard pressed to come up with the normal contribution plus another couple $1 million on top of that in 1 year. So what they do is they amortize that out. They take it over a period of 10, 15, 20, depends on the plan design and what that is. And because normal cost always is extending, amortization tends to roll off because, you know, if you're going to take a loss and spread it over 10 years, each year you go past that event of loss, the amount that you need to amortize is lower. So the amortization is essentially the way we refer to it is it's front loaded. It's at the early part of what you're paying into the plan. So column 1 represents the pension expense as it exists. Column 2 represents the pension cost, annual pension cost, post the transaction that we're talking about. And we based, again, number 1, off of the city's actuarial reports and the reports that are filed pursuant to Act 205. And we have provided information to the city's actuary, full and fair disclosure, I'm not an actuary. We've provided information to the city's actuary who has confirmed that this is the impact that the transaction would have. So column 3 is showing what we're referring to as benefit to the city. And what that represents is just the difference between what would you pay if you didn't do this and what would you pay if you do this. Let's stick in column 3 for a minute. So you go down column 3 and you see that much like the amortization of the unpaid liability, the benefit of this is predominantly front-loaded. That's because the Act requires you to treat this deposit as an amortization payment. That is, it has to go to reduce amortization costs. Well, the bulk of the amortization costs are in those, roughly first eight years. So you see these numbers, then they go down to essentially zero. $22,000 is a decent chunk of change, but in the kind of numbers we're talking about here, it's essentially flat. Then you'll see it drops to what I would call a modest negative, 202, about $500,000, $1.2 million, $1.2 million. So in total, there's a total savings of about $3.3 million. But because of the way the amortization is structured and the fact that these payments have to be used to reduce amortization, the total savings is $3.3 million, but it's not level. It's not, X amount of dollars per year consistently for every year. And we've also included as a reference NPV or net present value. The net present value savings is actually higher. It's 4.7. Net present value takes into account the time value of money. So getting $1 today is more valuable than getting $1 15 years from now. So on a net present value basis, the savings are about 4.7, almost 4.8. The other column that I think is relevant is number 4, which is the year-over-year change in the city's annual pension expense. Right? One of the things that obviously no entity that has to prepare budgets wants to do is have huge fluctuations, particularly more up than down, but huge fluctuations in their year-over-year costs for something that's in the budget every year, right? That's why when you borrow money, you don't try and pay it all off in 3 years and cram it in and have your expense go way up. You spread it out over the life of the assets. You know, if you're buying equipment or building a new city hall or whatever it might be. So if you look at this, I think the thing that's kind of jumps out, if you go down column 4, you'll see that there's not huge changes. I shouldn't say not huge. There's about a $500,000 increase in 2022, but that's a $500,000 over the lower previous amount. Then if you go down, it's pretty flat, negative 116. Now that's a drop of 116,000 in the year over year. Pretty flat again. Then you'll see that there's a big negative, right? The year over year there is going from 600 to 300 and change, where you come down and see a couple of negative numbers next to each other is out in 37, 38, and 39. And you've got negative benefit to the city in 37, 38, 39. But at the same time, you're having a reduction in the year over year amount that's budgeted. So the fact that we're identifying this as negative benefit to the city is not causing you to pay more than you would otherwise be paying, or jumping year over year. It's more than you would otherwise be paying, but it's not like your pension expense was here and then it's going to jump up for that reason or go back down. So that's a far more manageable way to address the way that this savings falls out than if it was jumping up and down and causing you to have to put more money in a given year than you put in the year before, and then it would drop and jump and drop and jump, etc. So, and then we again just annotated that the funding ratio numbers go from roughly 53 to 65 pre versus post. So, again, a lot of information. Happy to take questions.
Don't see any.
Okay. Well, again, I'll make the offer in terms of forwarding the Chapter 4 of 205 to administration to share with folks. And if after we depart there are other questions, if you relay them, we're obviously happy to answer them so that you get any questions you have addressed.
Or city controller.
In 1998, council approved a bond to fully fund the pension. And then the market dropped and we had recessions. And that bond was refinanced year over year. So now from 100% we're down to 56%. We still owe the full amount of that bond from 22 years ago almost. So what is the greatest risk that this plan would have for minimizing the risk of the same thing happening again?
So I'm going to answer it the second way that you asked. What minimizes or eliminates that kind of risk? And the answer is that
I'm going to ask you to turn and face us.
Oh, I'm
so we
sorry.
can pick up the
I'm sorry.
microphone there. Thank you.
The difference between what was done, and I would refer to that as a traditional pension obligation bond, some of which have been successful, some of which have not been over the years, both in the Commonwealth and other places in the country. Traditional pension obligation bond is you borrow whatever the sum of money is, seeking to put it in the pension plan, and your goal at that point is to, at a minimum, have that money earn a return more than the cost of borrowing it, and hopefully earn a return at least as high as the investment assumption, because that will help shrink the unfunded liability. The significant differences between that and this are, number one, that's a general obligation fund borrowing. So you are pledging, when you do something like that, your full faith and credit. And that means that if what happened in that example happens, you are on the hook to come back and somehow, A, pay that debt or refinance it to make it more manageable or whatever it is. In this instance, because the only thing you're agreeing to do is assign these 205 receipts, look, this is entirely a very, unlikely thing to happen. If you put this money in the plan, and 7 years from now, the plan had performed so poorly that effectively you were at the same place where you started, your only obligation would be to continue to have the receipts, be siphoned off to go and cover the assignment. So the other difference is these 205 monies, as I mentioned at the very beginning, may only be used to be put in the plan. So what you're essentially doing here is saying, look, we're going to get a certain amount of money over this window of time. We believe it's more beneficial to the city as a whole, both by raising the funding levels of the plan and by not using their general fund credit, to exchange the right to receive those in the future for an amount of money up front. Those dollars are going to end up in the plan one way or the other. You're not making a choice like in the traditional POB where if you're allocating general fund dollars or pledging general fund dollars, you're making a choice in some way to say, if it comes down to it, I'm not going to pave that pothole. I'm going to have to use that money to pay this pension bond obligation on. This is not that arrangement. The city has no liability in terms of any repayment of the bonds that are sold. Its sole obligation is the assignment of those receipts and to the extent that they're received from the Commonwealth. Again, if the Commonwealth at some point says, hey guys, game over, year 8, we're not giving you another dollar, you don't have any issues. The folks who bought the bonds believing that the Commonwealth would continue the program for the duration are out. So that's, I hope I answered your question. That's the sort of very significant difference between this and, again, what I would refer to as a traditional pension obligation bond or POB.
This is a work session. And generally, in the past, we have a work session on a Tuesday. We have some time to think about things, Wednesday research, and we have a voting session on Thursday. This is heavy stuff. I mean, and I'm learning about it this afternoon. The mayor had, or Charlie McCormick and our city administrator had a meeting with us. And I rushed back home and I'm trying to do as much stuff. And one thing that I like to do is answer questions in a very succinct way to my constituents, to explain it. Kind of like, I guess, an elevator speech when you have a company, right? So that's why I'm asking you about a deadline. And it's not that I'm against this at all. I just can't yet, at this second, absolutely grasp it enough to regurgitate it to, say, one of my voters. So I'm just throwing it out there. Is it all right that we look at this and then study it for 2 more weeks so I can really, really understand it, and we'll put it back on the agenda at our next meeting, which, when's our next meeting, Jim? 2 weeks? So 12th and then the
19th.
19th. I mean, I'm sorry, how do you feel about this, guys? I mean, it seems really good. I just can't get my hands around it enough to explain it to somebody.
Tony, I certainly agree with you. The information, we certainly appreciate that, but there's a lot of it.
Again, I wouldn't argue that point. It's, look, you as a group don't do this every day.
Not at
so
all.
I can certainly
Yeah.
understand that.
Yeah.
I'm going to defer to the mayor in terms of what timing is. I will tell you that we've had a lot of discussions with the administration, and we were asked to come and have this discussion with you folks at City Council, and that was generated by dialogue between us. So I don't want to be presumptive and speak for the mayor in terms of timing or what he thinks is a reasonable
But you just said the calendar year.
path forward. Yeah, what we're talking about in terms of is pricing and settling in the calendar year. Now,
Okay.
that means that there's some things that have to occur before that.
Understood.
Do they have to occur tomorrow? No, but
Okay.
again, I'm defer. It's not really my place to speak for the mayor in terms of what timetable he would, you know, he's looking to have the city on in that respect, so. Thanks. Sure.
This is your decision, this is your vote. Like I said, we've been working on this for the last 10 months. We know it inside and out.
Yeah.
You're seeing it for the first time. But please understand, there are time constraints here that we're looking at. So if you want to digest it more, we're glad to give you more information, but please understand that if we put this off another month or so, we're already into November now. And if you wait another month, it could have some effects on this plan.
Sure.
I mean, things change, interest rates change, other things change. So our intent was provide the information, hopefully answer your questions, and if you felt you knew enough that you'd be able to vote on it tonight. If you're not at that point, I can't force you to do that.
Right.
Okay? But it's really up to you.
Mhm.
But remember, this is already almost in the middle of November, and we do have to get this done by the end of the year.
Okay.
So, Mr. Barrett, I'll refer to you. What
Well,
you
there
feel
seems to be
you
some
want
question, and I see it as simply as, I don't look at it as a loan, we're not encumbering anything, we're not doing that, we're just taking the 205 revenues and turning them over into a collaborative pool for better investment, but.
Yeah, there's a couple of key things here. We're going to infuse about roughly $21 million into the aggregated pension funds that we don't have now. We're going to raise the funding ratio from 53% up to 65%. We get 50, below 50, we're in real trouble. So we're raising $21 million right into the fund. We're increasing the funding ratio from 53 to 65, gives us some breathing room. And then also, don't forget, there's a yearly savings that we're going to see by incorporating this. I think next year's yearly savings is 1.3 million, if I'm not mistaken. So
Yeah.
every year, over the next several years, there's going to be a savings that the city is going to realize in the MMO payments. So they're the benefits to it. And the other thing is, as Stephen said, that if for some reason we stop getting the state funding, the 205 is the state funding. If we stop getting that, we still don't have to make that payment to the bond. We have no other obligation to that bond payment.
Right.
They're some of the keys. Am I correct, Lou? Okay.
Good summary.
Okay, so I just want you to understand that that's the key points of it. And when I speak to people, I'm on the Aggregated Pension Fund Board, and every time we have a meeting, it's, what's the funding ratio, Mayor? You know, how we're gonna get that up from 53%? Might go down to 50%, we get the state, all these other things. That's one of the keys here, is to bring that up, because, you know, there's a lot of people that are counting on that money.
Sure.
I'm not telling you what to do, Tony.
No,
I'm just saying they're the key points to this, and, you know, we do have time constraints, that's all I'm saying.
I-
Mr. Mayor, I mean, I could, if you'd like, address that just a little bit, just to, so I would second what the mayor said. There's, look, and understanding I do this kind of thing every day for 25 plus years. So I'm very easy for me to have these conversations where I know that, first of all, this is not all of your folks' day job, number one, for the most part, or number two, what I'm doing is definitely not in your the description of your day job. So from that standpoint, I certainly understand, you know, the desire to I think as Councilman Brooks, you know, get your head around it a little better. It's not going to be catastrophic if you say, hey, we would just like to consider it at, was it two weeks?
It would be
Was that-
2 weeks from now, yeah.
Yeah. If you get much past that, now you're kind of pushing on the practicality of being able to get all the documentation and other things done in the time period that we're describing. So I understanding where you're coming from, I will say that you are not going to totally upset the apple cart if you say, hey, we would like to just take a breather for the 2 weeks. I would again kind of second what the mayor said is, I don't want to say that's a hard, fast, drop dead date, but it's kind of close
Yeah.
in those terms.
No, in general, we had a day, 2
Yeah.
days
No,
in
again, I
between.
completely, I completely understand. Again, there's a big difference between my understanding of it, the administrations and you all. And you all have to be, you know, you have to be comfortable with it. If you're going to approve it, you need to understand it, be able to explain why you thought it was a good idea or why you didn't think it was a good idea. So
You would like to make a motion to table this for the next?
Yeah, I just would feel a bit more comfortable and
This,
for
Mr. Chairman,
the next one.
this is just the work session.
Oh, that's right.
So
that's
again, the
Okay.
cleanest, easiest way to do it is just remove it from the agenda
Thank you.
for the next meeting.
And then put it
So
on the
there's no
agenda.
tabling, you just remove it.
Yeah. I have not, please understand, and Mr. Mayor too, not major problems. I'm just really,
No, look,
Got it.
I completely understand, and again,
It-
in that vein, if after, we depart and you sleep on it, or you're in the shower tomorrow morning, or
Yeah.
wherever your random thoughts pop into your head, you have other questions, by all means, we will be happy to address them to the full extent that we can. If you, cycle them through the administration, we'll get on them right away. We're,
right, your card's
you know,
here.
not trying to make anybody, it's certainly not our intention or our desire to make anybody jump to do something that they're uncomfortable with.
No.
That's, just not good way to run a railroad.
Sir.
Can I ask one more question?
Oh, I'm sorry.
Would it be putting it into too simplistic terms to say, it's like we're trading the annuity for the lump sum payout?
Yes, that's pretty accurate. The difference is you're trading roughly 80% of the annuity, not 100. So that's one other minor aspect of this. The 205 receipts have tended to grow over time because, again, they're driven by insurance premiums, and I think most of us know over time our insurance premiums don't go down. So the amount that the city and the other participants have received has ticked up. Nothing dramatic. It doesn't go up 15 or 20% a year. But because you're essentially only pledging that portion of the annuity, any of the growth is captured by the city. So, but yes, that's a very accurate, I hadn't thought of it that way, but that's a great way to express it.
I do just want to concur with Councilman Brooks. I really appreciate you coming here tonight to explain everything to us, the best way that you can. The administration may have had 10 months to review this, but we've had 15 minutes. And it's just not enough time for us to digest this information. But again, I just want to say thank you for coming out and explaining this all to us as best you can. And
No, absolutely. And again, we're happy, again, if there are follow-up questions,
Sure.
please let us know. We will make every effort to answer them so everybody is completely aware of, those, whatever the responses to the questions are and whatever we can do in that regard. And I would just say thank you all for your time. Again, this is not the simplest of things to get your head around, and appreciate everybody's time in listening and asking questions and trying to get, better educated and to use Councilman Brooks' term, get it your heads around. So we certainly appreciate the opportunity to be here. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Ryan, would you make the change in the agenda?
Yes, so this is removed from the agenda for the regular session going forward. And the mayor will have to bring it up at the next meeting.
Yeah, on the next agenda. No,
Okay.
thank you.
And any questions you may have, please forward.
I think we left off with you two were doing council presentation, so did you have
Yeah.
anything else?
I do, yeah.
Go ahead.
As it relates to the proposed 2021 budget, I've been receiving some messages and calls from city employees, most of them anonymous. And my colleagues and I are just trying our best to propose other solutions aside from layoffs in the coming weeks. I just want to make this abundantly clear that none of my colleagues are advocating for mass layoffs in any department, regardless of what the phone calls and messages that we've been receiving. We are, however, looking at other options aside from the proposed fee increase. This does not mean a cut in our services. But as I said before, we will need cooperation from city employees and our unions. We need to look out for all of our residents, not just those that work for the city. I think anyone who supports the fee increase either lacks empathy or has never been in a position where they have to make difficult decisions in their own household. If you're questioning whether or not residents can afford a fee increase, drive past the local soup kitchen. I drove past yesterday and I've never seen a line that long in my lifetime, ever. Talk to some people who go to food banks to get their food from for their family. Talk to people who skip some bills to pay for other bills until they get a shut-off notice. Look around at the houses that are dilapidated because homeowners can't afford to do necessary upkeep and repairs. If you've never been in a position like that, as I've mentioned before, count your blessings. For those that are in that position, I'll continue to advocate on your behalf and you're not forgotten. In that same breath, I do want to talk about the LSA grants that are on our agenda for tonight. I'm not necessarily against these items. I just don't know how we can approve items like those that are on our agenda when we're already in the hole financially. I don't know where this money will come from if we are awarded these grants and have to match them. I think we really need to be careful with our money and that these projects can wait until next year. I also think our focus needs to be on getting and offering relief related to COVID-19. Securing some type of relief, even through LSA grants, would be incredibly important to our city, and this should be our top focus right now. We need to keep our focus and apply for money solely for COVID-19 relief to help our city financially and our residents who are most in need. Thank you.
Thank you. Comment on that? Okay, Mr. Brooks.
Yes, I have a rather lengthy little talk I want to give. I'm going to echo a lot of what Beth said and also echo my speech from the last meeting, knowing that not other people didn't hear it, and then offer some ideas. So I want to add a few of my thoughts and observations to the general discussion on the city budget for 2021. And I know we will be discussing the budget in more detail on Thursday, November 12th, during the public hearing. I have mentioned many times before during budget discussions that in many ways our hands are tied by Harrisburg, third-class city rules, healthcare costs, pension obligations, and multi-year union contracts. Throw in a declining to flat property tax base, ever-increasing school taxes, limited incentives for regionalization and municipal cooperation, and our neighborhood to suburban flight. And we have a situation that keeps the city circling the drain, just like many working class families and low-income senior citizens who live paycheck to paycheck. Is there hope? Of course there's hope. I would not be sitting on this council if I did not believe in hope and solutions and in honest discussion with my fellow council members, the administration, the 4 labor unions which represents employees, and the residents of Wilkes-Barre. First, I want to say that Mayor Brown and my city council colleagues are doing and trying their best to come up with solutions in this time of a national crisis during the COVID pandemic. We have a very collegiate relationship with each other, and we all honestly want what is best for our residents, our businesses who employ people, and City Hall employees, and who deliver our city services to our restaurant, to our residents and businesses. All of America and Wilkes-Barre is suffering from COVID. Unemployment is high. Small businesses are hurting. Food prices are going up. Tax revenue for the city is going down. Our poverty rate is nearly 30%. Cost of living adjustment for senior citizens for 2021 is projected to be only 1.3%. I've spoken to people who have had COVID infections in their families, and they have experienced dramatic increases in expenses for health care for their families. I'm sad to say I've also had 3 friends die from COVID. Times are tough. People are suffering with no end in sight, and it only looks worse for the winter months, particularly for restaurants, bars, and other small businesses. The last thing people need in their family is another layoff, and I in no way am advocating for any layoffs for city workers. All of us are looking towards Washington and the federal government for help, but sad to say the extreme partisan gridlock in Washington is providing nothing. Our residents are crying for help. Let me give you an example. I received a call from one of my constituents in support of the mayor's fee increases of $100 for sewer and recycling. I asked her, how much do you receive a month in Social Security? And she said $700 a month. She also told me that she has lived in her house her entire life. Okay, the projected 2021 COLA increase for Social Security is 1.3%. She received $700. She will now receive an increase of $9.10. Now, we are proposing to take away $8 a month in the increased fees. Now she's only left with $1.10. But wait, it gets worse. The school board is increasing its taxes by 2.2, adding an additional $1.48 to her monthly budget. And her Medicare increase will be $9 a month, leaving her with $9.38 less a month. Thank God Luzerne County is not increasing their taxes, or she would be in the hole even more every month. As you can see, she is living on the edge, on the margins. My heart breaks for her and many more like her in the same situation. I have another constituent who tells me he had to get a part-time job just to pay his property taxes to keep up with the rising costs. It should not be this way. They are some of our most vulnerable residents, and they need a voice. I am here to lend my voice on behalf of vulnerable residents and senior citizen homeowners who are living from check to check. As we all know, the state of Pennsylvania provides a tax rebate program of $650 to low-income senior citizens. The woman who called me, the one who supported Mayor Brown's increases, has an annual tax bill of $1,439.25. That's nearly $120 a month, or 17% of her monthly Social Security income. In my opinion, the state of Pennsylvania needs to do way better by significantly increasing the tax rebate program so low-income senior citizen homeowners pay zero in property tax. So what can we do to help our most vulnerable residents on the local level? Low-income senior citizen homeowners and individuals and more small businesses due to COVID. I propose we use the LSA grants this year for two programs. One, to help low-income senior citizen homeowners with the proposed fee increase. And two, a local COVID relief fund to help people who are in desperate need of relief. I respectfully request we wait on the current LSA grant. All very fine projects. I have no disagreement with any of those projects. But let's this year help the most vulnerable amongst us. I want to praise the mayor for his creativity in repurposing another fund for small businesses and struggling restaurants in Wilkes-Barre earlier in the year. But as winter comes and Washington remains gridlocked, I'm afraid restaurants will close, evictions will increase, unemployment will increase, and more people will suffer. We can think out of the box this year with LSA grants and truly help those suffering the most. On Thursday, November 12th, is the public hearing on the mayor's 2021 budget. I encourage the residents of Wilkes-Barre to participate in the discussion. I also again want to encourage the leadership of the 4 labor unions to join us in the discussion on November 12th to offer solutions as well. I am often asked by my constituents, why do some city employees live outside the city? I do not have an answer for them. We all know that the solution is to have people living and working in Wilkes-Barre. That's the only way out of this, is to economically turn ourselves around with more economic activity. That's why our concentration should be geared towards economic revitalization of our business districts and our neighborhoods. And I know the mayor is working very hard on economic revitalizations, and I've always extended my hand to him to help the administration, Chamber of Commerce, the Diamond City Partnership on its economic development goals. As I said the last time, I'm very passionate about recreating the city in which I live. I can assure you I will continue to pour my heart and soul into the city until the day I die, God willing, some 40 years from now. But most of all, I'm grateful to the voters of District B who afforded me the opportunity to sit at this table, and I'm grateful to the mayor and my city council colleagues for honest, realistic conversations over the next coming weeks. Let us think out of the box. Thank you.
Thank you. Comments?
Yeah, I'd like to just say something too. I support both my colleagues, Mrs. Gilbert McBride and Mr. Tony Brooks 100%. I think these LSA grant money, we should be using some of it for COVID relief for our residents as well. And I too would like to just extend an invitation to our 4 union reps to join us on the public budget hearing on November 12th as well. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. That's all I have.
Mayor, the LSA grant applications have always been somewhat controversial over the years. And I see that you've given us some applications, resolutions in support of applications that are specific to projects within the city. And I know that there are significant guidelines that govern what you can and cannot submit applications for. I'm actually kind of surprised to see that you have one in here for 3 police vehicles. I didn't know that they were acceptable, but I guess that obviously they are. I'm sure you've researched that. I don't know how we could do grant applications, LSA grant applications that would assist individuals or businesses specifically with COVID-related issues, financial issues. I appreciate what you're saying, but I don't know if in fact that would be an acceptable application or how you could possibly do that. I know these are projects that are, what you have before us are projects that directly relate to the city, whether it's repairs in City Hall, purchase of police vehicles, the LCTA project. I thought maybe you might want to comment on how you came up with these particular applications and maybe respond to Mr. Brooks's concerns.
Council, when I became mayor, I said that we were going to utilize the LSA applications for the needs of the city. And that's what we're doing. These things are going to have to get done that I put in for. We have to get more police cars. We have to fix the HVAC system. It's not working. These are things that are going to come out of the city, the expenses, one way or the other, whether it's in the general fund budget or whether it's a request through LSA. We don't get every LSA application approved that we put in, okay? We don't do that. All we do is we pass it on to the folks that make that decision, Mr. Pashinsky, Mr. Dechak, Mr. Crawford, the other people that are involved. We're just the vehicle to push it through. One change is that the deadline is the end of November this year, not the end of December. Okay, so that's a big change because last year, year before that, we had the whole month of December to put these applications in. But the fact that we have actually 3 weeks to get this finalized. My intent is to utilize LSA funds for city benefits. Now, another thing to consider, a lot of these are hefty numbers. The casinos have been hurting too. They've lost revenue. It's based on Mohegan Sun casino revenue. We may not see any LSA grant money. We may see a very small proportion. I don't know what their profits are right now. I don't think they're as good as they were last year, definitely. My intent is, like I said, to try to use those funds to benefit the city, maybe infrastructure, it may be other things, it may be vehicles that we need. Right now, we're going to have to do something with the HVAC system. We're going to have to do something with the building. We have to do something with the windows. We have to do something with the outside of the building. It's literally dissipating, and we have to fix it. So, folks, one way or another, we're going to be paying for these expenses, and I felt the best way was to try to get some monies LSA.
It's not against any of your, I completely understand. I want the same thing. I'm just looking at right now, there are so many people crying out for help. Washington's not doing anything. I got this idea from Houston, Texas. Houston City is doing their own COVID problem relief because they're not getting anything from Washington. And maybe if John Udechak and Lisa Baker and Aaron Koffer and Ed Pashinsky, with our voices collectively, we just keep yelling at Washington that we desperately need help for our people. You know, George, that we're losing restaurants.
I know.
And we're going to lose more.
Mr. Brooks, let me clarify something. Since we started having a loss of revenue, mercantile tax,
Right.
earned income tax, the other permits that we counted on for some of the buildings that we were looking at. That's where we lost over $4 million, okay? We've been on the phone, we've been in meetings with Mr. Cartwright, Mr. Casey, Mr. Toomey. We joined other entities, other cities. We partner with Scranton and other cities where we're requesting federal money. We're requesting money from the state, we're requesting money from the county.
I understand.
We've received what we call CARES Act money for PPE only, okay? Personal protective equipment. Have we used it? We used every penny we got. And the thing is, we're not getting money to replace the revenue. You can't run the city if you don't have the revenue to pay the bills. I'm looking at ways I'm gonna pay the payrolls the rest of this year. The money's not coming in. The bills are coming in, okay? So please understand that when I come to you and ask for the budget that I presented to you, okay? It's not like there's a lot of fluff in that budget. If you're going through every line item like you say you're doing, you're not seeing a lot of fluff. But understand a couple things. There's 4 unions that have contracts. There's no layoff clauses in one of the union contracts. We're probably going to be going to arbitration in one of the cases because we furloughed people during the pandemic and the roof blowing off. We are dealing with things that are hard facts, okay? It's not hypothetical as well, we'll try and cut something out. If you guys can find some fat in that budget, you're doing pretty good. The thing that we did tonight with the pensions, I mean, yeah, we've been looking at that for 10 months, but you know what? We had to put it on the side for 6 months while I'm trying to deal with the pandemic and the other things that we're trying to do to run this city. It's not like we've been studying that for 10 months. We initiated it 10 months ago, or 9 months ago. But we brought it up because we see a substantial savings every year going forward over the next several years in our MMO payments and also bringing up our funding ratio to 65% from 53%. These aren't things that I present to you because I like to hear myself talk to you or bring these guys in from Lancaster. They're here because they're necessary to run the city. And I respect the fact that you want a couple weeks. And please do that, okay? But folks, I'm trying to tell you something. I don't know where I'm going to get the money to run this city next year if there's not a cooperation from city council on that budget. And I'm telling you something. The first choice we had, well, there's 3 choices. 30 mil tax increase. Our senior citizens, they're going to be hurting a lot more by a 30 mil tax increase. The second thing is a layoff. Now, I'm talking 35 people or so. I only have 38 in DPW, and there's 40 that work here in City Hall, not counting the health department, that's 90% funded by the government. There's not a lot of fat. There's not a lot of people. There's not people that aren't doing their job so they can be let go. We don't have a lot of people here that have to be let go, as you say. There's not a lot. And remember one thing, we're self-funded for unemployment. If we lay off Jim Smith and he's making $40,000 a year, we're self-funded. 50% of that person's unemployment is coming out of the general fund budget. So $20,000 of that for 26 weeks is coming out of the general fund budget. You have to understand, that's why it might be 35 people. But understand something else. And I'm not saying that you folks are saying, Mayor, cut people. But what I'm saying is, if we don't have the increase of $1 a week on the sewer and the recycling, I don't have choices. It's a 30 mil tax increase, which I don't want to do. The only other place to save is labor, okay? What does that mean? That means laying people off. That means people not coming to work where I don't have people to do the services that you get calls on every single day. How can I pick up garbage once a week when I only have a handful of people left in DPW? Think about that. Just think about what I'm trying to tell you. I don't have the options that you think I have, okay? No one wants to lay people off. You don't want to lay them off? I don't want to lay them off. You don't want a 30 mil tax increase? I don't want a 30 mil tax increase, okay? And you don't want to increase the recycling or the sewer? I don't want to increase it. Of the 3 options, I felt that was the best, the fairest. I'm trying to tell you folks that all the banter going back and forth, okay, all these stupid things that are happening on social media, it's not what's really happening, folks. What's really happening is the income doesn't match outgo. Doesn't match it now and this year, doesn't match it next year, even worse. We've done things like everything we could. We rewrote $24 million in bonds and saved $816,000. This pension plan that we presented to you tonight, there's the savings, substantial savings next year in the MMO of $1.3 million. The year after that, $1.1 million. The year after that, $1.1 million. These aren't things that Administrator McCormick and I sit down and make up in our dreams. We live it every day. So, no, I know you don't want to lay people off. I don't want to either. And I know you don't want a fee increase. I don't either. But there's not a lot of choices, folks. And I'm sorry, I'm just passionate about this. I hate to have people out of a job, especially when, if what we lay these people off, understand something, they lose their benefits. After a month, they lose their benefits. That means if they have a family plan, that's $30,000 a year. People that work for the city that have a family plan, it's $29,000 and change. Every year we're paying. Understand that. They're going to lose their health care and they're going to lose their income. So folks, I'm passionate about this, and I'm sorry if I'm preaching, Bill, but this is the only opportunity I have where we're all together and we could talk about it. So apologize if I'm taking a lot of time.
No need to apologize.
No need to apologize, and I understand your passion. I just wanted to bring the same passion of a story of what our people are going through, and I just want to make sure that right down to the pennies, just exactly how you said there's not enough revenue coming in to match the expenses. This person who who called me to, want to vote,
Go ahead.
when I went through all this stuff with her, it's a story that I wanted to tell to make sure that the citizens of Wilkes-Barre know that there's some of us here are really listening to them.
Yes.
And I know they're listening to you too. And that's also why I always want to stress that we have working relationships. We're all very cordial. I've actually stopped going on social media because I don't want to take any more high blood pressure medicine. I'm sure you don't either. But I just think it's just so important to really, really understand exactly what a 81-year-old woman who only has $700 a month is absolutely going through. And I wanted to be a voice for that tonight. I know we're going to have a budget hearing again next week, and we'll have more discussions, but I just really wanted to
You're right, Tony.
I just wanted to put it on the table.
That's
first.
why when we found this $300,000+, the best thing we could do was offer it to the people that needed it.
Right.
Okay? I wish I
Right.
could find another $500,000 for the people that need it and help them make the payments. There is no more. That was sitting there for 14 years and we were lucky to find it. We don't have it, folks. We just don't have it. And I'll give you an example. Bill, I'm sorry, but I got a phone call today. I was late coming to City Hall because I'm on the phone with several people, and this one lady, very good friend of mine, but she is against the increase. And we were talking, and I told her all the things that I just talked about.
Right.
About, the union negotiations, about all the things that we're going through. She said, well, I didn't know that. Why don't you publicize that? I've done 2 articles in the paper, and I've done things on social media, and we've talked to the news, and we've talked to TV. I don't know what more we can do to get this message out that we are really restricted what we can do. Okay? We have a no layoff clause for 1310 that works at City Hall. That's why we're probably going to go to arbitration, because I furloughed 10 people. If I lay off another 10 people here, we're going to go to arbitration, which means we're going to be paying for that. And guess what? It was signed into the contract last year. Okay? I didn't sign that in, but I have to live with it. A lot of the things that we're living with now, we're only in office 10 months, and we're finding things out that we didn't even know about. So what I'm trying to say, folks, is you guys have a better idea how to keep this city going next year? rather than do $1 a week for the sewer and recycling? I'd love to hear it, okay? But I'll tell you what, I don't know how we're gonna do it. I really don't. We have people taking benefits that we can't afford. We can't afford benefits, okay? And I hear it all the time, okay? And I'm not picking on you guys. Every single time I hear, why does council get benefits? Okay? I'm not picking on you. I've never brought that up with you. But you know what? That's your choice. I don't take them. That man doesn't take them. Between he and I, we're saving the city probably around $75,000. You know what? That's our choice. You guys decide that. You want to take your benefit, your life, and your dental and your vision. That's your choice. It's not my business. But I'm the one that has to try and find a way to pay for all the bills that we have. So, I'm sorry,
No,
I won't say any more.
it's great that, no, it's great, this is what work sessions are for, and this is why we have it. Yes, some of us take benefits, some of us don't. I'm not sure that people realize that for 21 years, city council has taken a pay cut by not having any increases, so there's been a pay freeze for us for 21 years. City council reduced its members from 7 to 5, and I did a little calculation. It's saving us something like $1.5 million over the last decade because of that. So we're all trying our best, and I really hope the labor unions would come here to give a presentation, to just say, hey, what do you have some ideas? I offered an idea about LSA grants. Maybe we can find out if that would work or not. We have some time, and just put these on hold until we find the answer to that, to help people who are suffering under COVID. That's all I'm putting out there. So thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you, Mr. Mayor.
I just have a couple comments. I think there's a misconception also that people are choosing and saying that they don't want to pay the fee increase. And it's not that they don't want to pay it, it's that they can't pay it. And I also think there's a different school of thought here. I personally don't think the taxpayers should have to shell out any more for my health benefits. I don't think so. They pay enough. I mean, we pay 3% on earned income tax. My taxes are through the roof. They're close to $3,000 a year, plus my mortgage. I don't think people understand not only what elderly people go through on fixed incomes, but also what working class families go through. It's not a matter of wanting or not wanting to pay a fee, it's that people can't afford it. And if you have delinquencies now with recycling fees and the sewer maintenance fees, you're gonna have a hell of a lot more next year, because people cannot afford it. That's all I'm saying here. And like I said before, none of us are advocating for layoffs. None of us want that. And the calls that we're getting that are borderline threatening and everything else and anonymous by city employees, they're obviously being put up to it. And this has to stop. It's not civil. It's not productive. I just don't know how else to say. I don't know how to stress to people that you have to care about the people that you represent. And I know that you care, but I just think that, I don't know.
But Beth, how do we pay for services? How do I keep the police working? How do I keep the fire department working? We have open positions, I'm sorry, but maybe I shouldn't answer that.
I think we've gone through all that already.
It's just that
Yeah.
we have several open positions we have not filled.
I understand that, but one thing, for example, is $500,000 in overtime for DPW for simply waste collection alone. $500,000 for waste collection, the job that they're hired to do in overtime. That's just one example. Maybe we could cut that back a little bit. These are the things we're talking about. Maybe trim that down a little bit. Maybe trim down some overtime during special events instead of work with the unions, and instead of allowing employees to be paid for 4 hours when they're only working for 1 hour, that's something that we're talking about here. We're not asking for these insane concessions. We're just asking for people to be paid fairly and appropriately. But for a DPW worker to make his salary back in overtime, we can't sustain that. That's all I'm saying. That's what my colleagues and I are looking for. We're just looking for a little bit of cooperation here. That's all I have, thank you.
Okay, thank you. The only thing I'm gonna add, and we'll finish this, is you brought up a very interesting point. You touched on it about the person that came to you, the 81-year-old woman, and lives on $75,000 or $8,000 in Social Security a year. I mean, it's certainly not sustainable. And I know when COVID started, there was stimulus funding that went out to people like her. And I'm kind of embarrassed that this country has not continued doing that. That they take this and they bicker and they argue when something like that is going on right in front of them and right in front of us. And that's where that assistance needs to come from. And it did, and it stopped because they couldn't come to a consensus or agreement across the aisle on what they were going to do. So you know what they did? Nothing. And that's why people are in that position there.
Correct.
And that has to change. I'm sorry, that's the end of all I have to say on that.
You're absolutely right.
It is a sad situation. Okay, Mr. Ryan, that's all I have to say. I'll take a break for a minute and do the meeting. Unless there's anything else from council. Okay.
So, so where, I think the question is now, before we complete the work session, is do you want to go ahead with these resolutions, vote on them separately? You know, Mr. Brooks mentioned holding off on them till the next meeting.
I would be fine with that if I can get an answer if we could use LSA in another way to help.
We can.
Um,
The guidelines for LSA grants are very, very vague. Literally, all it says is funding for projects that improve the quality of life of citizens in the community. That's that's why everyone applies for them.
Right. But maybe a meeting with you, D-Check and Ptaschinski before, within the next 2 weeks, would come to order to see if this would fly.
Right.
The only suggestion that I would have is that there's nothing stopping us. There's still time to add another LSA grant.
Yeah.
We don't decide who does what, who gets what. We don't. It's not our decision. We could put 10 out there, as the mayor alluded to, we might get nothing.
Right.
My recommendation is that we move forward with these, and if you want to introduce another one for our next meeting, I think there's time to do that, based on what you were saying, and I would have no objection to that, but these are relatively time sensitive. And again, we're not assured that we're getting anything out of any of these.
I fully recognize that.
And these are
yeah.
certainly viable projects that we are going to be faced one way or another funding it. Whether it's through an LSA grant, most likely it's not going to be an LSA grant. Most likely we're going to have to address these ourselves. So I would advocate that we move forward with them. If you want to vote on them separately, that's fine as well. And you want to introduce another one that maybe can help, and hopefully can help some of the people like you just spoke about, that's fine also. But I think that we need to move forward with what we have in front of us here. We know that these are issues that we're facing in the next year. We have an air conditioning system that's not working. We have police cars that need to be replaced. That all of these things need to be done. There's no assurances we're getting anything out of them. But again, if you want to introduce another one, maybe meet with whoever you need to meet with and put it on the agenda for the next meeting, that'd be wonderful.
I mean, I could live with that, because I do realize, because Beth, of course, we've been here before, and we've said that over and over again, particularly to the public will come and yell about why are we letting such and such, particularly usually a nonprofit, apply, and we always say, well, it's right, it's not our decision. They may or may not get it, and the money could go to Hazelton or some other municipality. No, so I'm actually, I'm fine, because I do realize that we want to do this, but I hope you would accept in 2 weeks my idea for a COVID relief fund coming out of COVID at LSA, and we can confer with you, D-Check and Ptaschinski beforehand about the viability of
Which
that.
I think would
So,
be great.
Okay, so I'm fine.
I'm good with that.
Are you guys, you fine?
I'm good with that.
Well, I think we also need to keep in mind that the more LSA grants we apply for, the less we're going to get. So I think we need to narrow our focus on that as well. And like you said before, we're not saying that these aren't important projects or anything like that, but if we apply for 5 different projects and then add another one next week, why not just apply for one and up our chances of getting that one that we really care about?
If you want to vote on them separately, I have no problem with that.
I mean, I'm okay for these going forward, because it's, again, it is out of our hand, except it does, what is in our hand is, I do know how these work behind the scenes. And I think I'll have a better understanding once we have a meeting with, some state senators and state reps.
Again, I would make a recommendation, we move forward with what's in front of us. You want to add an additional one in 2 weeks?
And we can do that in 2 weeks.
That's wonderful, that'd be great if you're able to do that.
All right.
I do have a couple of questions, though, regarding the LSA grants. Is the City Hall renovation project, if we were to be awarded that money, do we have that match budgeted already in the 2021 budget?
No, we don't, because we don't know if we're gonna get the funds.
So where would that money come from if we were awarded that grant?
It depends on what the project is gonna be, and we don't even know prices. So we're projecting prices for some of these things. HVAC, we don't know what has to be done, but I have to put it in there because if we ask for $700,000, we may get $25,000.
Right.
We may get $50,000. Being practical, okay? I don't know what's gonna happen with the HVAC. I know that's not working. So we're putting in estimates. We haven't done engineering studies. I don't even know if they're gonna be accepted or not. So for me to say it's gonna cost $500,000 and I got $500,000 in the budget, no, there's not a dime in the budget for that. I don't have anything in the budget for it. I don't know what's gonna get approved. I don't know what's gonna cost. I haven't done an engineering feasibility study, nothing. So basically, if you decide to approve these, I don't even know how much we'll get if we get anything. We may not get a dime because maybe Mohegan Sun only had a $10 million problem. I don't know. And it's not just us, it's other people. It's Kingston, it's Fort, it's all these other municipalities.
But hypothetically, if just say we're awarded $500,000, we don't know where that other $500,000 would come from right now.
We may not need another 500. I don't know what it's gonna cost.
Well, you have to match whatever you're given.
I don't know what it's gonna cost. And I don't have that information because this is a projected LSA application. I don't know what we're gonna get. I don't know how much clearer I could be on that.
No, I understand. I just don't know where we're gonna pull money from the air next year if this gets approved. That's my
However,
only.
if we do have to do this project and we don't get any assistance, we're still facing that expenditure. We're still going to have to do this one way or another, whether we get assistance or not. It'd be great if we do, but we still have to fix the HVAC system, my point. That's my point. Okay, all right, so where are we? Gonna move forward, we're removing the pension liability resolution, the one on the top, number 1.
Right?
The pension,
Right, that
pension
was-
financing, excuse me, pension funding solutions resolution. Separately, let's do the other one separately.
We're doing the resolution separate?
Yeah,
Yes.
let's do them separately, since there seems to be some. And that's it, we'll take a break for a minute, let you get.
So right now, again, the only thing that was removed at this point from the agenda was the
Pension funding.
resolution regarding the pension funding
Yes,
solutions.
Right,
That's
All the
correct.
others are going to be voted on separately,
Yes, sir.
correct.
okay?
Take a break for a minute, you okay?
Yeah.
just starting the regular session.
Okay, so what time?
Are you calling on just general business or something on the agenda?
Well, I'm calling to support the mayor's budget.
Okay, hard to say.
If you're watching,
If you're watching, we'll tell you when to call in.
Why have to run to the store? So you think it'll be 20 minutes or so?
I really can't tell you how long, sir. I don't know how many calls we get on agenda items.
please rise to the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Almighty and everlasting God, who presides over all things in heaven and earth, come and preside over these deliberations so that those that make the decisions may be guided by your wisdom.
Okay. Mr. Ryan, roll call, please.
Okay, Mr. Beluska,
Here.
Mr. Marconi,
Here.
Mrs. Gilbert McBride,
Present.
Mr. Brooks,
Here.
and Mr. Barrett.
Here.
Also in attendance tonight is Mayor George C. Brown, Controller Darren Snyder, Administrator Charles McCormick, Deputy Administrator, Director of Operations Butch Fraudy, City Attorney Tim Henry, IT Director Frank Hirschberger, Assistant City Clerk Catherine Payne, and Administrative Assistant Lisa Sanfilippo. Okay, the first order before getting into the voting on the resolutions and the ordinance is pending legislation. Council will now take questions, comments on agenda items from the public by phone. The phone line is now open. Agenda items only. 5 minutes per call, please.
I have someone on the line, I'm not sure if it's on pending, so.
Okay. Good.
Hi, please state your name for the record.
Joseph Milcavige,
Where are you calling from and what is it in reference to?
Joseph Milcavige,
Where are you calling from, sir?
Rolling Mill Hill section of Wilkes-Barre.
And what is it regarding?
It's regarding the mayor's budget. I agree and support his decision on this budget.
Sir, I'm going to
proposal.
stop you there. We're in the, actually the voting part of our meeting. So we're only taking calls on items that are on the agenda for this evening. But however, you're certainly welcome to call back when we get to that part of the meeting, which should not be too long. If you're watching us, you can call in at that time. Okay? All right. Do we have any?
Please state your name and where you're calling from.
Hello.
Yes, please state your name and where you're calling from.
Yeah, this is Joe from Wilkes-Barre.
Go ahead, sir.
Can you hear me?
Oh.
Yes, I agree. First of all, I agree with the mayor, and I agree with all of you. It's very difficult. It's very, very difficult times, and I've been looking at some of the comments that have been made to Beth and others, and there's just a lot.
Sir, are you calling in reference to an item that's on the agenda this evening, or is this general comments?
My bottom line here is,
Sir,
I do agree with the
sir,
mayor.
we're only taking calls on agenda items at this time. You can call back shortly when we get into the general discussion.
Okay, I might be misconstruing what we're talking about here.
Okay, just items on this evening's agenda. However, we do have general discussion shortly.
Okay, let me put my ears in and be a little bit better shape here, I'm sure. Just hold on for a second, please. Thank you. Okay, can you hear me now?
We can, however, we're reserving comment at this particular time for items that are on this evening's agenda, not for
Okay,
general
so you're
discussion,
not
not about the
voting,
budget or any other
yeah.
matters. However, you can
you're
call
not
back
voting
in when
on
we
the
get to that
mayor's,
part of the meeting.
You're not voting tonight on the mayor's
Sir,
proposal
No.
for the dollar? Okay.
No,
So I'll call in next time.
thank you, sir. We have no written correspondence on the agenda items.
please state your name and where you're calling from.
Yes.
Hello?
Okay, Mr. Ryan, I think we should move forward.
Okay. That's it on the call-ins for pending legislation then, Mr. Chairman?
Yes, sir.
It was me. Instead of hitting talk.
Hello?
Hello?
Please state your name and where you're calling from.
Constance Wynn, calling from Wilkes-Barre.
Are you calling about an agenda item?
The item that I'm calling about is the mayor's budget proposal.
That's not being those calls aren't being taken at this time. We're gonna vote and then you can call back later.
Thank you.
Okay.
Go ahead, Mr. Ryan.
Okay, we'll start out with the resolutions. And the first resolution is to submit the necessary application to the state acting through the Commonwealth Financing Authority for the county local share related to LCTA's new transit facility project. Motion, second, and vote.
Motion.
Mr. Barrett, second.
I'll second.
Mr. Belusko? Mr. Belusko?
Yes.
Mr. Marconi?
No.
Mrs. McBride?
No.
Mr. Brooks?
No.
Mr. Barrett?
Yes.
Motion fails. Next is to submit the necessary application by the city to the state agents acting through the Commonwealth Financing Authority for the local share account related to the city of Wilkes-Barre's police cruisers project.
Motion?
Mr. Belusko? Second?
Second.
Was that Bill?
Yes, sir.
Thank you. Mr. Belusko?
Yes.
Mr. Marconi?
Yes.
Mrs. McBride?
No.
Mr. Brooks?
No.
Mr. Barrett?
Yes.
Motion passes. Next is to submit the necessary application by the city to the state acting through the Commonwealth Financing Authority for the local share account related to the Emergency Operations Center project. Motion, second, and vote.
Motion.
Mr. Barrett?
I'll second.
Mr. Belusko? Mr. Belusko?
Yes.
Mr. Marconi?
No.
Mrs. McBride?
No.
Mr. Brooks?
No.
Mr. Barrett?
Yes.
Motion fails. Next is the submit the necessary application by the city to the state acting through the Commonwealth Financing Authority for the local share account related to the City Hall renovation project. Motion, second, and vote.
Motion.
Mr. Belusko, second.
Second.
Mr. Barrett. Mr. Belusko.
Yes.
Mr. Marconi.
No.
Mrs. McBride.
No.
Mr. Brooks.
No.
Mr. Barrett.
Yes.
Motion fails. And next, we have the single resolution regarding the new item that the mayor presented at the work session. And that is the city of Wilkes-Barre is desirous of applying for $410,000 grant from the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania, acting through the CFA for the local share account, Luzerne County Program Funds. The funds will be used for the schools and homes in education, SHINE, for the Luzerne County program. Motion, second, and vote.
Motion.
Mr. Belusko, second.
Second.
Mr. Barrett. Mr. Belusko.
Yes.
Mr. Marconi.
No.
Mrs. McBride.
No.
Mr. Brooks.
No.
Mr. Barrett.
Yes.
Motion fails. And we have the second reading on the single ordinance that we have before council tonight. Motion, second, and vote.
Motion.
Is that Mr. Brooks?
Yes.
Second.
Okay. Mrs. McBride? Mr., is the second? Mr. Belusko?
Yes.
Mr. Marconi?
Yes.
Mrs. McBride?
Yes.
Mr. Brooks?
Yes.
And Mr. Barrett?
Yes.
Motion passes.
Thank you.
And then we have the minutes of authorities, boards, and commissions. Motion, second, and vote.
Motion.
Sorry, who was that? Mr. Marconi? Mr. Brooks. Okay.
Second.
Mr. Marconi? Mr. Belusko?
Yes.
Mr. Marconi?
Yes.
Mrs. McBride?
Yes.
Mr. Brooks?
Yes.
And Mr. Barrett?
Yes.
Motion passes.
Okay.
Okay. Presentations by council. Mr. Chairman?
Thank you, sir. Mr. Belusko, anything additional?
No, sir.
Thank you. Mr. Marconi?
No, sir.
Mrs. McBride?
No.
Mr. Brooks?
Yes, one thing, Mr. Chairman. I wanted to thank the mayor for sending out the information about the police substations. And my question is, I noticed in my area that the police officers issued 36 quality of life, I guess, citations. Are the police stations operating on the weekends at all?
We're operating, actually, they're being paid through grant money
Right?
as officers are available to be involved. As you'll see, we try to equalize as much as we can the 6 different stations.
Mm-hmm.
And no one station is any less occupied than any other one. And you'll see that, like I said, all 6 of them are equal.
Okay. The point I wanted to get to is related to the quality of life issues. What I constantly see in my neighborhoods are people putting out their trash 6 days. Just one chronic place puts it out on Saturday that gets picked up on Wednesday. And I was wondering if any of those quality of life citations were related to trash, or could it be? could we use those officers to go give a citation because someone has their trash out?
What happens, Councilman, is the officers block a beat now.
Right.
So they're basically community police officers. I should be standing up.
It's okay.
They're community police. They're walking the beats. If they see something that's a quality of life, they report it. I get a report from every single police officer that works a substation. If they have quality of life, they identify them. They are sent to code enforcement.
Okay.
Code enforcement goes out and gives a letter to abate. There are other things where they've done actual criminal arrests.
Yeah, I see
They've
that.
done things where they've done, people going down one-way streets the wrong way, we cited them. So, it's the obvious code enforcement, quality of life, but they are, every day they're turned into, code enforcement people, but they're doing more than that. I mean, they're passing out COVID information. We have flyers that we have. They're passing out COVID information. They're stopping in the stores, and they're talking to the store owners and telling them, you know, I'm Officer Jones, please use my card, tell me if you need me. So they're not only doing that, but they're also looking at, there's several that were cars, okay, that were signal inspection, things like that.
Right.
They're doing a lot, but it's strictly community policing, getting back to blocking the beats. And that's why we have 6 identified there, because we want to, each of the districts, Mr. Marconi has 2 in his, because the second one, the first one was actually started before I became mayor. The second one was started because Chief Coffey said to me, Mayor, I think we should put one up at Shield because there's some bad activity going on the side streets off of George Avenue. So when he said that, I said, okay, I authorized the 6 one. And what they do now is they're walking down those side streets. And they're doing an awful lot of good. I'm just trying to keep it going. Okay, but some of the things that you see are paid for by grants. Okay, and that's being paid for by grants.
No, I absolutely approve the project. I love the project. My question is about, were they actually giving the citations for quality of life? But no, they give a report and then it goes.
Report is
Got
forwarded
it.
to the code enforcement,
Okay.
they go out the next day, and then they cite.
Got it. Good.
Letters are paid.
Okay.
Tony,
Thank
Mayor, Councilman Brooks mentioned about, are they out there on the weekends? They're out there 24/7, right? They could utilize those police stations, substations at any given time of the day.
That's exactly right, Mr. Belisco. They're there on weekends, they're there at midnight, especially General Hospital, there's activity there a lot at night because of obvious things that happen. So they go there during the heart of the season, but Mr. Belisco, in your area, advanced hearing, we had, and you know,
I've seen them several times.
you know, we've had some problematic problems right in that neighborhood, that they walk the beats, they walk while they off-lying streets, so yeah, they're there any time of the day or night.
Thank you.
And Mayor, also, I do want to thank you for that second substation up in District D. It is very much appreciated.
All right, so we left off with you, you're done?
Yep,
Okay.
thank you.
And I don't have anything additional. So we're going to move on to the public discussion portion of the meeting. I know that we have several emails, but if you are watching and you do want to call in, now is the time to call for public discussion on any item that's council-related, not necessarily an agenda item. Take your calls now.
Please state your name and where you're calling from.
Yeah, this is Bob Kalabowski, 41 New Frederick Street. Could everybody hear me?
We can.
Okay, tonight I'm calling about, I want to put the council on notice, and I'm warning you very seriously. We'll do not be putting things in the paper asking the unions for concessions or to go along. That has to be done through the mayor. Remember Tony George interfering with the unions cost us about $750,000. And here's the problem we have. You people want the unions to give up stuff. I'm going to read something here, and I know the unions have this. I'm going to read the council salaries off and benefits. William Barrett, $14,699 plus $116.76 for life insurance. Total $14,815.76. Michael Belushko, salary $13,199 plus medical $11,082.48. Dental $375.96. Vision $39.72. Life insurance $116.76. Total salary benefits $24,813.92. Anthony Brooks, salary $13,199. His dental $375.96. Vision $39.72. Plus life insurance $116.76. Total $17,331.44. And I also missed for insurance $415.68. That's the total what he gets. Then we get to Miss Gilbert, $11,879 salary, medical $28,000, $482.12, dental $939.24, vision $111.12, total insurance $29,532.48, life insurance $116.76 for the total of $41,528.24. John Marconi, $13,199, plus dental $939.24, vision $111.12, total insurance $1,050.36, plus $116.76, plus a $3,600 buyout for the total of $17,966.12. And also Tony Brooks, and he's probably the hardest working councilman, $3,600 buyout, which Tony told me he uses to give to charities. Now, that comes out, all this stuff comes out to $116,455.48. My proposal is this: we're done. And Beth said it. We can't afford a lot of these things. We can no longer afford to pay these health care costs for you people, these buyouts. And I also understand Mr. Marconi's wife, after the first of the year, may qualify for $3,600 buyout. I don't know if that's true. I would like to find out if it is. So what I'm asking everybody to do, we're done. Give up all these benefits, and I want you to follow the line to what the mayor did. He took a major pay cut as mayor of this city. He took a major pay cut, plus no health care, along with the city administrator, Charlie McCormick. So what I'm asking you people to do, that's it, 50% pay cut and do away with these benefits. When I look at this thing here from Mr. Belushko and for Beth, it is absolutely absurd. $41,528.24, plus Mr. Belushko, $24,813.92. And I don't want to hear how you people say, well, it's more than that. We work a lot. I don't care if you're working 24 hours a day. The problem with you people is we have to start somewhere. And that's what a lot of the union people said to me. They want us to give up our pay increases and give up stuff. Look what you people are doing, and it's part-time. And I don't want to hear about this, how you take phone calls and you do this and you do that. You should be proud to serve the city. This is outrageous when I see what this health care and everything is costing. So I don't think you will give me an answer tonight, but I want an answer at the budget hearing. What you are going to do about this? This is outrageous. There's people who work 2 jobs who don't make $24,813.92 a year. And there's people who probably work 3 jobs and don't make $41,528.24. So when you're asking the unions to give up, I want you people to give up. And I've been fighting for this stuff for years. And then we could get into some other time. I know the Auditor General is looking at how you people count part-time service towards like a full-time pension. That's what's bankrupting the city. And that's all I guess I got to say on it. Does anybody want to say anything to me? And especially you, Bill. Bill, I think what you should do to set an example as senior member, I think you should work for $1 a year. You could afford
Bob,
it.
we've
I'm
gone
not
over,
trying to start
Bob,
a fight
you're
with
way
you,
over time.
but you have enough income coming in. You should work for $1 a year. That's what you should do to
All
set
right.
up
Thank you,
a
Bob.
good example for the rest of the council.
Thank you, Bob. Council members care to comment?
I have a couple comments.
Go ahead.
Once I've done some more research into it once I speak to my colleagues. I would like to introduce a resolution to stop healthcare and pension benefits for council members beginning in the next term. I think that's a fair compromise that we could come to, and I think that it's something that needs to be visited, especially considering the report from the Auditor General. Bob had mentioned the union members and how they want to see council sacrifice a little bit more. Well, as Mr. Brooks said earlier, council has saved the city over $1 million, $1.4 million since we've frozen our salaries many, many years ago, over 20 years ago, I think it was now. And another thing he had mentioned is that union members want to see us sacrifice as well. Well, if you notice, my salary is a little bit lower because I took a 10% pay cut. And that was my doing. I don't expect any of my colleagues to do that. That was me. And another difference between me and some of the union members is I don't mind paying something towards my health care. But these unions, they don't want to pay anything. And that has got to stop. That's what's bleeding the city. When I came into the HR department, I asked about the health care because I literally had no other choice but to take the city's health care. And I was told that nothing would come out of my paycheck for a family. That's insane. No other job offers that. And it's time for the unions to buck up a little bit and realize how lucky they have it. So yeah, I wouldn't mind paying a little bit more for my health care. And that's something that needs to be done during union negotiations. That's all I have to say.
Mr. Chairman, if you mind. Bob, yes, I do have that $3,600. However, in the beginning of the year, I did commit to giving that back to the city, and I stand firm with that. I will be giving that $3,600 back to the city. That's all I have.
Thank you, sir. Okay.
I state your name and where you're calling from.
Hello?
State your name and where you're calling from.
Wilkes-Barre. My name is John, and my wife's name is
Mary.
and we're calling in to support Mayor Brown's budget, and I wish you would think about that because it's really needed. We're going to have a lot of garbage in the city, laying people off. So, thank you. Thank you.
Thank you for calling.
State your name and where you're calling from.
Hi, my name is Lois Grimm, and I'm calling from Wilkes-Barre.
Go ahead.
Hi. So first, before I state what I was calling in about, to Bob Kettlebuski, that just spent the last 5 minutes denigrating, insulting, and being generally very rude to every council member, the mayor, and anybody else sitting in that room. He should be ashamed of himself for asking people to work for free. I know how hard it is for all of you, including the mayor, who I very strongly disagree with. No one should be talked to that way. And I applaud you for having the patience to deal with that, because I certainly wouldn't. I'd also like to add that the council salary pales in comparison to the $500,000 in overtime that the DPW gets every year, along with city hall benefits and pensions. Anyway, first I wanted to touch on the woman that Tony was talking about in the work session. This woman is willing to sacrifice her own well-being to pay these fees. And I think we should all remember and really think about what that means, that this woman is going to sacrifice money for food, maybe money for just a cup of coffee that maybe she enjoys with her friends, to pay for these fees. So this is a real life sacrifice that the mayor is asking for. Secondly, the LSA grants. I know that they were mostly voted down tonight, but I'm offended that I'm being asked to pay double in sewer and recycling fees, yet being asked to pay towards $2,072,127 in LSA grants for things that largely do not benefit in real ways residents of the city. I'd also like to call on Coffer, Baker, and Paszynski to stop the school board increases, stop things like rain taxes and vehicle registration fees. Now, Mayor Brown says this is only $1 a week, and you're right, it is only $1 a week. I could stop by a cup of Dunkin' Donuts coffee once a week. But the list of taxes and fees that I'm expected to pay as a resident of Wilkes-Barre, Luzerne County, Pennsylvania, United States of America include vehicle registration, house insurance, car insurance, health insurance, property taxes, school taxes, county taxes, state taxes, federal taxes, 401k and retirement, electric bill, water bill, phone bill, gas, garbage, quality of life fines, parking fines, rain tax, vehicle registration fee, food, school clothes and supplies, gas money, car maintenance, rent and or mortgage. So, yes, it's only $1 here, it's only $5 there, it's only $10 there. But you add it all up, and at the end of the week, when my husband and I get paid and we sit down to look at our bills, that adds up, and yes, it is a very real thing. Lastly, I would like to call on the union to please agree to a wage and hiring freeze. I would be happy to pay, instead of $1 more a week, 50 cents a week. If the unions would agree to a wage and hiring freeze. We all have to work together on this, and as Mayor Brown said, yes, it is a dire situation, but putting it on the taxpayers and saying it's only $1 a week is, I think that it's offensive. I would also say that the colleges need to increase their pilot funding, and again, the taxpayers, yes, we should also help out with this, but it should not be all on the taxpayers. People are working hard all over. During the last meeting, it was mentioned that the city DPW and firefighters and all were working hard. Yes, they do work hard, but people all over are working hard. Cashiers work hard. Truck drivers work hard. Teachers, everybody works hard, and especially the frontline workers, like my sister Yvonne, who works at Price Chopper, and her husband Clem, who works at Garrity. They work this entire time and put themselves and their children at risk working. So, just because you work hard doesn't mean that you shouldn't have to sacrifice like the rest of us. I have more to say on the budget, which I'll save for next week, but I just want to say we all have bills coming in, and that's a hard fact. So while the city has hard facts and they have bills coming in, so do we. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Comments?
State your name and where you're calling from.
My name is Linda Ross. I'm calling from South Wilkesboro. I am calling regarding the proposed tax, well, not tax increase, but increased fees for both garbage and recycling. I don't like it, but if we don't do it, I don't want normal increases in my taxes. I don't want to face another increase. I know and I hope you are looking for ways to trim the budget, but I know that COVID has impacted the city greatly, and I just hope that you're turning over every rock, and if necessary, you will increase the fees judiciously for both of those, looking for some other ways to take care of things. Thank you. Goodbye.
Thank you.
State your name and where you're calling from.
Calling from Wilkes-Barre.
Your name, sir?
Joe?
Go ahead.
Hello.
Go ahead, sir.
Can you hear? Yes, ma'am. Oh, okay. Yes, I approve of Mayor Brown's budget. It's very hard on a lot of people, very sad with what they said. about this 81-year-old. And my thought is, Tony said, think outside the box, and it's possible that Tony and the other council members, along with the mayor, might be able to reach out to Kings and Wilkes College and have maybe some of their students or some of their sororities or whatever it may be, to form some kind of a committee where they could fundraise for the people in very dire needs. Again, Tony Brooks has said, think outside the box. I agree with him as well. That's it.
Thank you, sir. Jim? Spoke too soon.
State your name and where you're calling from.
Hi, my name is Jason Carr from Saylorsburg, Pennsylvania. First, I noticed, I'd just like to speak about, my mother wanted to listen to the city council meeting today, but she does not have internet access. And nowhere on the site does it list a phone number to, at least on the city council page, to listen to the meeting live via a regular phone. And I was wondering if that was missed or was it done intentionally, or is it something that I'm not seeing? It's a huge problem to disenfranchise so many people who do not have internet access, not being able to listen to a city council meeting. This has been brought up before to Mr. Jim Ryan formally through letters, and I wish you could get it straight. I would also like to thank the three council members, Mr. Brooks, Mr. Marconi, and Ms. Gilbert McBride, for standing strong with the taxpayers and citizens of Wilkes-Barre. We greatly appreciate what you're doing for us and appreciate it. As well, I really wish Mr. Mayor Brown, George Brown, would step up and be public about possibly asking concessions from the unions. Now, the state of Pennsylvania has asked for salary freezes and is not giving salary increases to their employees for 2020. But as well, the unions want their 3% increases. I don't understand why the mayor continues to play politics, pitting the unions against the three council members who stand firm for the citizens of Wilkes-Barre. Maybe if more leadership came from the mayor, there would be a different situation. Hopefully in the future, by next Thursday's meeting, he may do so. I would also like to thank Mr. Kataboski and Ms. Grimm for their words tonight. They do make a lot of sense. Long before I came on the scene, Mr. Kataboski has advocated for these concessions, and it's very exciting to hear that Ms. Gilbert is going to be putting forth a resolution to reduce the benefits of City Council. We look forward to it. As well, looking at why is the city of Wilkes-Barre in the position that it's in. The unions, the police and firemen, feel that it is bestowed upon them because they are employed by the city to increase their pensions the last 3 years of their employment. As we all know, the city currently has $143 million in unfunded pension obligations. It's inconceivable. And Mr. Brown
Mayor Brown, who said he has a business background, sits silent and does nothing. He asks for no concessions. What does he ask for? He asks for the taxpayers of the city of Wilkes-Barre to pay more out of their pocket. When Mr. Brown knows that what the firemen and the police are doing regarding their pensions is bankrupting the city. No one should be allowed to double or increase their pension by 50% in the last 3 years by working inordinate amounts of overtime. But Mr. Brown sits there quietly and puts his head down, probably looking at the ground right now, while he asks a woman making $700 a month to pay more money. It really doesn't make sense to me. And again, looking at the council members that are defending the taxpayers, they deserve the people's support. It's a disgrace. The party is over, and it looks like we have 3 council people, Mr. Brooks, Mr. Marconi, and Ms. Gilbert McBride, who are willing to stand up and make the changes. So I applaud them. And I appreciate the hard work that they're putting in to make the right decisions for the taxpayers and the citizens.
Mr. Chairman, time.
Thank you, Mr. Clark.
Have a good night.
Thank you, have a good night. Jim, I'd like to get through some of these letters now rather than...
Certainly. The city, Mrs. Payne has received 7 of them by email. First one is to Mayor Brown and City Council. In regards to wanting to raise the cost of sewer and recycling fees, are you kidding me? And you want to give your staff raises? When I first started following the post through Facebook, I was upset about raising the sewer and recycling fees because I am a 1-income family and I am retired. I was working part-time until COVID-19, at which time I was no longer working. Why the increase of the fees and why give your staff a raise? Makes no sense. I'm on Social Security and I didn't see a yearly raise in what they send me. I think I could probably handle the increases you so desire if we could use regular garbage bags for one thing. The cost of blue bags is outrageous and should be stopped. Having to pay for those bags and the increase won't fit in my budget as it stands now, and I'm sure it won't for too many Wilkes-Barre families either. You will see garbage strewn about and people putting things in dumpsters that don't belong to them because they can't afford to pay for the bags. How much are you going to put on the people of Wilkes-Barre before they all leave the city? I have blighted properties around me, but nothing is done about it. Start going after the owners of these properties and start charging them a fee every month of $100 until they clean up their properties. In my area, most are from New York, probably using it as a write-off on their taxes. My neighborhood used to be really nice, and I maintain my home myself. How about penalizing the people that don't take care of these properties? I used to clean up a yard that didn't belong to me just so my area would be presentable. I no longer do it. It didn't help. From what I've been told, the property was sold to someone from Brooklyn for $6,000. Still sits idle, but they did cut the grass a few times in the summer. Why hurt the city property owners and leave the absentee landlords alone? Go after them and stop hurting the people who have been here for years. I was recently informed that my supplemental medical will be going up by $25 a month. My drug coverage is going up $20 a month, and I never could afford dental, so when I go to have my teeth cleaned, I must pay out of pocket. Let's get real here. Let's start charging the colleges as well. Why should they get a break? For once, give the residents a break before you lose us all. Thank you for listening. Please do not raise these fees. Deborah Jenkins. Next is to Councilwoman Gilbert McBride, Councilman Brooks, and Councilman Marconi. I respectfully ask for you to vote for the proposed recycling and sewer maintenance fee increases. While it may seem unfair at first glance, it really isn't when you look at the big picture. What we have been paying is a bargain, and we can't expect that to go on forever. The city needs these vital funds to run effectively for all of its citizens. I would think that Councilman Marconi, for example, would understand as a manager of a national grocery store that when costs go up, you have to find some way to make up that revenue, or soon you will no longer be in business. Wilkes-Barre City needs to find a way too. Sure, some landlords will be against these increases because they would end up paying more than just a single household, but it can be worked into the rent they receive from their tenants. Isn't that why rents go up? To cover increased costs? Please make a decision that will benefit the city as a whole and allow it to thrive and be a city we can feel even more positive about. I would like to thank my councilman, Mike Belusco, as well as Councilman Barrett for realizing the value of our city's workforce by supporting these fee increases. And I respectfully ask Councilwoman Gilbert McBride, Councilman Brooks, and Councilman Marconi to support these fee increases as well. Thank you for considering my comments. All the best, Shannon.
Mr. Chairman, may I speak for a moment?
Certainly.
Thank you. Yes, it is true here. I am a manager of a national grocery store. And one of the ways one of the things that we look at is payroll. And it's do more with less. I just wanted to mention that for the record. That's all that I have.
And it probably is going on. I've never seen the DPW department be as low as it is right now. I mean, not only are they out there picking up trash and recycling, but of course they're doing all the other things, maintaining the parks and plowing roads and fixing roads. And I think there's 36 of them or something like that. I'm sometimes amazed at what they do. So I think they are doing more with less. And I do understand the overtime line that is put in there, because I know that oftentimes they're out there on weekends trying to get caught up, especially in the middle of summer with all the yard waste and everything. So you are right, do more with less, and sometimes there's a cost that comes along with that too.
Yes, also, I'm not directing that at anybody. It was just a general statement that our company tells us. Just, do more with less. Like I said, it's not directed at anybody, just a general statement.
Thank you, sir. Jim?
Next is from Sue Bruno. While I agree with raising those particular fees, it is very hard on people that are on a fixed income. My husband is retired, and if I didn't work, we would not be able to afford the increase. Perhaps someone in the administration should start to think about discounting senior citizens after a certain age, their taxes, and raise taxes of the working people. On items like the sewer and water, the seniors are tapped out. You might want to start doing that because it would make it more attractive for people to look at Wilkes-Barre if after a certain age they didn't have to pay certain things, and we could get some of the scumbags out. To whom it may concern, I am a taxpayer and resident of Wilkes-Barre. I strongly oppose the fees being raised by the mayor of our city in regards to recycling and sanitary. It's not bad enough a rain tax was introduced into our lives, albeit not on the part of the city or mayor. But just the same, it seems like every day our wallets are getting hit with more fees and taxes, yet our roads and residential areas are in shambles. Here's an idea. Dump building the bridge on North Washington Street as proposed, and use that allocated money to help the city make up for the loss in revenue due to COVID-19 pandemic. Tighten the budget on the city's spending instead of always taxing the residents to death. And for the love of all that's holy, fix these streets. Thank you, Thomas R. Frank Parsons. To Councilman Brooks. I was born and raised in the city and recently returned to reside in Wilkes-Barre after 20 years. I understand that I now live in District B, your district. I'm looking forward to many years of enjoyment as a resident of the city and want the city to have the money to provide consistent and efficient recycling and garbage collection services. I would hate to see any decrease in these extremely vital services. Bills go up, the cost of living and the cost of running a city goes up. It's a reality we all have to accept. We can't let the whole city of Wilkes-Barre suffer just because some of us don't want to pay a little more. I believe these fee increases would be a worthy investment and the cost would be comparable to what I was paying where I used to live. So I feel it's more than fair. I would much rather pay the extra $2 a week than have my recycling and garbage collection service affected. For example, if the city had to reduce collection to every other week because of layoffs. This is a small price to pay for these services. I would like to take this opportunity to thank the City Council members who support these increases. Respectfully, Ray McGraw, Academy Street. This is from Elaine Smith. I would like to thank the 3 council members opposing the fee increase. It is finally nice to have someone fighting for the citizens. I have read the council members opposing this have been looking for ways to reduce the budget and help generate money. I would like to ask each of the 3 council members if Mayor Brown or any of the administration has asked them any of their ideas or thoughts that may help the situation. Thank you, Elaine. Dear council members, while I understand that as a whole the city is looking at where they can adjust to increase revenue, I wholeheartedly ask that you reconsider your position on raising the recycling and sewer fees. First, I would like to point out that we are in the midst of a pandemic that has taken a huge financial toll on so many people. To even imagine that at this time you are working to increase fees for the residents of your community is very disheartening. Do you not feel that it is bad enough that Wilkes-Barre City residents have to pay outrageous fees for blue trash bags that barely hold up when we actually put garbage in them? While I understand that you may have a considerate amount of people that may say, sure, raise the fees, we can afford it. But what about the even larger group that absolutely cannot? It is not the citizens of this town's fault that you did not or could not properly put together a budget, and they should not be the ones that have to pay. In reviewing your budget, I see that you decreased the amount budgeted for snow and ice removal. What if we have a bad winter? Should we expect not to be able to travel to work? You also decreased your budget for communicable disease control. In the midst of a pandemic, you drastically decreased your budget for maternal and child health services, but doubled the budget for police training and increased budget for parking enforcement. Does the health of your city not matter to you? Is this always all about the money that can be made? You have increased salaries and pensions for government employees. Well, how about putting a freeze on hiring or increases to pensions and salaries as opposed to charging your citizens more money for the errors that were made in the budget? I would like to thank the members of the City Council that are fighting for our communities. So to Beth, John, and Tony, thank you. Sincerely, Carla Blakesley. And that was the last one, Mr. Chairman.
One more?
That was the last one. That was the last email.
Comments from council on any of the letters?
Yeah, I do. The one that Sue Bruno sent in and mentioned about having a discount for senior citizens. Do you think that is at all possible to do, or are we bound by Harrisburg rules of some sort?
I don't know how we administer that, number one. I don't have that, I don't have an answer to that.
Right. It is something, and I know when I mentioned about the tax rebate program that Harrisburg has to have a substantially increased. In Florida, there's a program that if you have been in your house for 25 years and you're a low-income senior citizen, you don't pay any taxes. Now, I know that's a program that Harrisburg would have to do, but I mean, that's something that I hope that UDCHEC and Paszynski would take up. when I look at this woman who called me up from Loomis Street, and she's been in her house, actually, she's been there for 3 generations, so she inherited from her parents. So, you know, long-term residents are really impacted, in particular long-term homeowners. Senior citizens are really impacted by these taxes, and they just need some kind of relief. The $650 they get is not enough. Obviously, this woman still pays $1,400, so it's not even covering, you know, it's only covering 40% of her taxes. So if there is a discount program out there, for something in my head, why I'm thinking dog licenses. When I go to Luzerne County, I think if you're a senior citizen, you pay a little bit less for a dog license. I have to go look at my forms, but that is something to look at. And if we could do that, that would be appreciated. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Anything else, council, on the letters, public comment? Okay, with that, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
Motion.
Thank you, sir. We are adjourned.